look into detail at missing species, for example, or changing ecological processes or whatever, I'm sure that those ecosystems that have had such transformation in the native biota will probably come up as well in the criterion C or D. So it's just a matter of understanding that the first cut is done with distribution in these large scales, and then the second cut has to be done in a more detail. But the knowledge of the function of the ecosystems is so much less than there is about the changing distribution that it is definitely an underestimate of risk, no question about it.
I think this is a very interesting discussion. So it does point to some sort of risk around this that we'll have to manage, I think, quite carefully, yeah, and explain to people.
It does also point out the ground truthing, obviously.
Yeah.
And it also points out why was the national park on the World Heritage site, what is the real problem? Is it because of the loss of elephants and rhinos and all that sort of stuff, which might not appear on the ecosystem because a satellite won't pick it up, or is it a loss of a range of tree species, for example? So, but I think the issue is more ground truthing it afterwards and getting the reality check. And it does call again that say we identified through red list of ecosystems place X as being endangered, and if there is no species work that hasn't been done there, it calls say we need some species assessment going on there as part of ground truthing next process.
Okay, thanks for that. And now Akbar, I'll come to you because you had your hand up earlier. And we're going to move on to key biodiversity.
Yeah, so my point was basically almost similar to your point, but basically I had a bit more specific one to say that in also your concept of yellow and greens. If we're looking at the tools and databases, they were around 2015, right? Yeah, 2015, that's what you were saying, that we would have tools available to store data and kind of things. Now I was just trying to run the question that way. If we have to start thinking about integration between various ecosystems and species, for example, when is a very kind of realistic time for us to think about it?
Well, I mean, the tools exist. If you are competent analyzing land cover change in whatever form that you want to do it, then you've got the tools. What we were hoping is to have to develop some ways that people who do not have that capacity could. There are lots of possibilities. We have lots of thoughts about when we talk about it. But the idea is to find ways to simplify and to make it easier for people who don't have deep training to be able to process information and changes. So the tools will be things like, we're hoping, similar to the mapping tools of the realistic species, that kind of thing somehow built in, connected to a change detection opportunity. I mean, the kinds of things that Google Maps is already doing, trying to find a way to. And part of the reason that we have that sort of highlighted high is that we were hoping that to have a close collaboration with Google Maps for this stage of the project with the Moore Foundation, because they were doing that. And that's not quite working, so it might end up being, we'll downplay that in the medium term. We'll see.
Okay, but we've already got an action point now. We need to have a further conversation about this. So I'm going to go on to key biodiversity, and I believe it's Stephen. Thank you.
It's on here, but it's not on here. I had a waggish thought that with all the genetic engineering going on, we may need a rainbow list of transgenic species. So, really, Diego or Tom should be giving this, but they've been giving it to various parts of the world. This is part of the Joint Task Force on Biodiversity and Protected Areas. It's what we call Objective 2, prosaically enough. And it's really to consolidate a standard on identifying sites or areas of global biodiversity significance. You may know these as KBAs, but we're really not using that terminology. We're talking about areas or sites of biodiversity significance. Like the red list of ecosystems, this comes from Bangkok. It was a motion in Bangkok, and it builds on really a long and rather colorful history of KBAs, which have been well debated and sometimes very controversial. It has led to a lot of work, a lot of good good work. So we're really building on ideas that have come before. And it's again spurred on by this international commitment under Target 11, which we've seen several times already, especially areas of particular importance for biodiversity. So we have this task force. Nick and Simon have tasked us with consolidating the global standards for the identification of this. The task force is very large, actually. We are well served by a large steering committee and have enormous, really, contributions from Diego and Annabelle, who will be coming back soon off maternity leave. But there's 220 people signed up nominally to the task force in this Google group and have committed, and many of them have made significant contributions in one way or another. Again, so we're building on approaches here. There's already numerous well-established approaches, important bird areas, important plant areas, freshwater areas, prime butterflies. And on this page, we probably should add, gentlemen, the EBSAs, the ecologically and biologically important marine areas, because this comes out directly out of the CBD, and there's a lot of good work going on in marine ecosystems, coastal marine ecosystems on this. It's all about looking at which sites are irreplaceable. We're trying to come up with a global sites of biodiversity significance, and the key criteria is irreplaceability, which can be defined as a level of uniqueness. And we haven't defined what this level is. We talked about it, but this is something which will have to be defined in the standard as it's developed. So why a unified standard? There's a lot of policy confusion out there. We hear from organizations like Shell that they would love to have one-stop shopping for this kind of information. We want to increase the credibility of this information, make it usable to people. That's what IUCN can do. Want to avoid duplication, reduce costs, etc. IUCN is good at this, long history of this. So this global standard for sites or areas should, we think, be easy and effective to apply. It should be pragmatic. It should allow for comparability between regions and taxonomic groups. It most importantly should guide decision makers. It should be a useful product if we're going to do it. Resource management, private sectors, donor agencies, etc. And it should add value to existing approach. We're just not trying to put an IUCN brand on someone else's good work. We're trying to really add value to it here. And we want to help countries define their conservation priorities and to achieve their international commitments like the action targets. We've been at this for a while. We had a really good meeting last year at the Society for Conservation Biology in Auckland, and there was a bit of a raucous meeting, all positive, but we realized then there was so much diversity around this whole question that we had to have a high-level framing exercise. And we did that in June in Cambridge, and it was, some of you were there, I think it was a really successful meeting where we hammered through with really the global experts on this, what this would mean, how it would add value, what did it mean in terms of irreplaceability, and a number of other approaches which come out of the conservation planning literature. We had the who's who of conservation planning in the room, and it was hard slogging for a while, but I think we're clear sailing now. We have a framework report that's come out. The copies of it are available in both the Protected Planet Pavilion and the SSC Pavilion. Since then, there's technical options papers that are ongoing. They were started before we had the meeting in Cambridge, and they've been retweaked or are being retweaked. and their technical options on things like criteria and delineation and case studies. There are regional consultations planned and just happened. Diego and Tom were in Glasgow, I guess most recently, presenting on this. And there was a workshop yesterday in Jeju, which I was not able to go, but I'm told by Tom and Diego that it was really successful. So we'll try and, we don't know exactly when this will finish. Optimistically, we would like to finish it up by the end of next year, but that's probably optimistic. The technical working groups are going to continue early in next year, and let's put this 2013 the end as a placeholder for now, assuming that task force is reappointed after the elections.
It will be.
This is a photo of the framing workshop in Cambridge. We had good representation, not only from the different kinds of interests, be they academics or private sector or conservation organizations, but also the taxa that they represented and the kinds of gross ecosystem types that were represented there. And the common agreement that came out of that is that there's a really clear purpose for this criteria, to identify areas that contribute significantly to the global persistence of biodiversity. So the global criteria that's going to be operationalized nationally. This process is not going to stop any individual sectors from ongoing work, especially EPSAs. There was some concern there. It will not, this is an identification approach. It will not mean that an area that's identified has to be designated. It doesn't mean they have to be protected areas. It doesn't mean a country has to do something. We would like countries to do something because that's why they're being identified. But we didn't want to hook identification to designation in this exercise. It's a data layer to inform prioritization, planning, and other processes. So who does what? What's IUCN's role in this as a knowledge product? IUCN will do capacity building, has a long history of that, provide technical support, data validation, and reports and research. But this will be, much of this work will be, the data will be collected by others, and the end users are others than the IUCN. Three outputs of this, what this knowledge product will be. It will be a set of guidelines. It will be recommendations for assessors on exactly how to do the assessments. Be recommendations for end users on how to do it, not to overstep the attributes of this, and procedures for the IUCN. This will be, like other knowledge products, an online spatial tool and a database to provide access to the data. And the data will be areas that contribute significantly to the persistence of biodiversity. So that, in a nutshell, is where we're going with this knowledge product on areas of significance for biodiversity. The task force has a website that Diego is diligently keeping up to date, and it also has a Google group where we try to keep track of these 210. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stephen. That's a really nice summary. Questions for Stephen on key biodiversity areas?
Or Diego, or me.
Or Diego or Tom, indeed.
I want to add something.
Diego would like to add a little bit.
I would just like to add that we have a working group, a new working group, with agreed on the terms of reference to work with the GOBI and the task force to work.
Say what GOBI is, please.
Global Ocean Biodiversity Initiative. They are managing the EPSAs, the identification of EPSAs, which is a CDD process. So we have now a working group to work on the synergies and how we can align this process with that process. And the other thing is the report is available. I can send it to all of you. I printed 3 copies here, so you can have a look. But the report is quite comprehensive in what we agree that this could do, and the executive summary is 3 pages, so you can read that. The whole report is 70 pages, so it's a bit long too. And yeah, that's any question you just ask.
I mean, I'll just add too that having been at the workshop and having lived with a lot of the interesting discussion over many years, what was great about that workshop in June was that the critics came to the meeting and we really debated the issues. And it was IUCN at its best to me. We had the critics in the room and we hammered the things out in a good way. So it was very positive, and it's actually not possible to convey the richness of the discussions actually, and Jake has done a great job in putting together this report. So any other questions at this point? No. So what I'd like to do now, Simon, I announced this when you were rounding people up. If you could speak for a few minutes and make a few remarks, as we hoped you might at the beginning, but you weren't able to do, so that's no problem at all. We've been very flexible this afternoon. And while Simon's doing that, maybe we can set up the demonstration of the WDPA and its integration with the red list. It's all ready to go, is it? Okay, well, Simon next anyway, please.
So, sorry, I was supposed to be here at the beginning, and we've had a difficulty with the contact group, shall we say, and there you go. So actually, I don't know what you've been discussing. I've been listening obviously since you came in, since I came in, and you've obviously been going through each of the knowledge products in turn, I guess. And presumably you're focusing on integration. Yeah. So I think that's good. I think it's great. I think we have a significant challenge in terms of how we're going to resource all of this. I think everyone agrees this is exactly what IUCN should be doing. One of our major roles is to provide knowledge, provided to a high standard, but not such a high standard that we don't ever produce anything. So we've somehow always got to find that balance. That the knowledge products must be fit for use, especially for policy development, planning, for guiding resource allocation, whatever it may be. All of that, and for research. So I think all that's good. But I think we also know this is quite outside the priorities for most of IUCN's donors. I mean, not that we can't get any money. We get, I don't know, $4 or $5 million a year. IUCN itself for the species red list, and the red list partners raise a lot more as well. But it's still, we still haven't moved the scales to where we need to be in order to produce the knowledge product that really needs to be produced, although it's already useful. All the other knowledge, WDPA, I'm sure it's exactly the same, all the other knowledge products in the process of development, all of them have registered ecosystems and KBAs already raised some money, but once they move to full operation, you have to raise one heck of a lot more. And so I think we've really got to figure out how we're going to do it. Probably integrating is going to be easier for many donors, but I think we've also got to think about innovative financing mechanisms, because I think that, I can tell you from the red list experience, the project fundraising approach that we use, and I don't know, Richard or someone here can probably tell us how many projects we have supporting the red list, 20, 30, 40, including a BAU and FBU.
About 40?
40, 50 projects. All with donor deadlines, all coming, the transaction costs of maintaining all of this. It's a nightmare, it's stupid. But it's the only way it actually exists. It wouldn't exist otherwise. So and red list partners sitting out here are exactly the same. You're doing the same in Q, right? So we've got to find a way of making this sustainable, and it's going to become even more important as we bring on more knowledge products. But maybe you get more compelling if they're integrated. And so I think that's something we have to work on together, not SSE and species program on their own on the species red list. We've got to figure out how we're going to achieve this across all of IUCN, including partner organizations that work with us on this. To me, that's going to be a huge challenge. We've partly got the technical stuff on the integration, we've partly got the technical stuff on completing the development of certain knowledge products, and the largest amount of technical work is probably on the products you're not covering here, on all the human dependency of nature and the natural resource governance framework, because they're the earliest stage of development and actually are intrinsically hard to do, although very important. they've got the largest amount of technical work. We've got that, and we've got the technical work to do with integration. At the same time, I think it's not too early to be thinking about how we resource this, and whether there are any sustainable ways of innovative financing that we might come up with. That might not be on the agenda here, but it's certainly something we should be talking about beyond here among each other and sharing bright ideas and really testing some out. Does that help you?
Yes, that's really useful, thank you. Yes, it very much speaks to the discussions we've had. Just one thing on priorities. I mean, for the first time in its life, IUCN is actually looking at the work in the programme it's going to prioritise, and I think this is long overdue because we can't carry on doing everything. And integration of the knowledge products is seen as one of those priorities and will be stated as such eventually, and considered by the new council, and I'm delighted to see that. I mean, we've had knowledge products prioritised, yeah, that's right, but now the integration of them, which is excellent. And as a step, and I'm a great believer in steps, as I said about 3 times, we've agreed this afternoon, Tom, I'm not sure if you've were in the room, that coming up with a sort of 2-pager on what the plans are for each product and then its integration with other things. We're going to talk about pathways